Earnestly podcast after nearly 4 years on the show. Matthew McQueeny is back. Mixed Matters podcast host, entrepreneur, father, husband. I mean, dude, it's been a while. It's been a while, buddy.
It has been a while. It's been a while for my own podcast a little bit, and we had you on a couple days ago.
Yeah,
and
the time.
I'm trying to really. I love doing it. Whenever I walk by my equipment, I'm always mad that I'm not recording something. I get that feeling where it's like I got to record something every day. There's no reason not to, even if you don't use it. And so I am in different respects doing that, but this one is, you put a lot into it. It's 10 years almost that I've been doing that podcast, and it doesn't make sense to stop. It's okay to slow up a little and maybe go to the back catalog, but it doesn't make sense to stop.
Well, you've been pretty busy the last couple of years. I mean, the last time you were on the show, I think you were in the middle of school. You went back to school, back to Rutgers. In fact, the last episode we did, you were literally driving from there late at night in a snowstorm.
Well, that's like when they tell the stories about kids. When I was a kid, I walked to school in a snowstorm backwards uphill. Yeah, that was almost. I was driving uphill from school,
right,
as a nearly 40-year-old with 2 kids and a wife. So that is done. It was a year ago in May that I graduated. I finished my MBA in just beneath 3 years, going to 2 classes essentially per semester right through the summer. And it was great. And it's funny because when it ended, I thought to myself, I'm going to have so much time. And almost like the way the water comes in and clears the snow castles and everything, and you got to restart, you never really have time.
Right. But how was that? How was dealing with that during the pandemic though? Like going to school, going to still having a job, and having to navigate that with 2 young kids. Our kids are close to the same age. I know mine is 10 and 6. Yours maybe 9 and 5 or 8 and 4.
8 and 4.
Right. So we're close in range in that same thing. So how was it like navigating all that in the middle of the pandemic?
The interesting thing is I started school when my second son had just been born. So he was 3 months old when I started. So I knew nothing different. And it just taught me that if you put your mind to something, you really can do anything. And it's not like I was a prisoner of war, going through barbed wire, not eating.
Right.
It wasn't like the Louis Zamperini story or something.
Right,
but
right.
In the grand scheme, it was really great, actually, because I knew nothing different. I always had 2 kids when I was in school. I was ready to go back. When it started, I was working at a company that was across the street from the business school. Mm-hmm. So I would really just go to my work day and then eat my dinner and then head to like a 6 p.m., 6:30 class. And then boom, I kept my car in the same parking lot, get home, and you're home before 10 p.m. And you were kind of rejuvenated. I got so much out of it. I thought it was great. And let's be honest, as a parent with 2 young children, it was kind of like a night away. I didn't have to do, I was struggling with my mental capacity and learning, but those were 2 nights where I was an adult. I wasn't putting kids to bed. I'd get home and they were already asleep, and that would be 2 times a week. And then when the pandemic, so first off, the best thing was that I got to have the normal experience of going to class at the front and the back end. And then the pandemic happening was actually really favorable to me because now we're working at home all the time. Yeah. And school didn't stop. It just went remote. So Rutgers University was never really there was no remote potential. And now all of a sudden you're remote. I can do Saturday morning classes. I could add another class because it's just you're here all day, right? And then you get on, you're doing things through video. And so that whole middle portion, I got to get a lot done. I got to move through it a lot. And then I still got to finish back in class again for my last 2 semesters. So it was, for as bad as it was to have a pandemic, obviously all the lives lost, just the change in how our lives were lived. For me and my reality, it was actually a really, it was favorable. It was what do they call it? Propitious. It was great, and I knew nothing different, and I lapped up. It ended up being a catalyst to a lot of the things I've ended up doing, because it gave you the backing that the way you think was actually sound about business.
Right.
Gave you the wealth of experiences of all the other part-time students who have full-time jobs and at big corporations. So you got to mix and match with them and do presentations and come together on big strategies. And it was like really neat, because I'd be working during the day, and then you'd be doing study at night, which is about your work day essentially. And then you'd roll in the next day like some expert
Yeah.
on business ideas.
So all that, like, I mean, you obviously had to have the wife's blessing on this. 'Cause, I mean, she's taking on a lot more now. You're going to be going to school, for extra hours after work. I mean, she's doing more at home now. I mean, she had to be a superwoman, of course, to do what she did, right? I mean, was she supportive?
She comes from education. She's an administrator in a school district where, previous to being an administrator, she was a music teacher. I think this is her 17th year.
Right.
She has several, I don't know how many masters, but at least a master's, and then the steps that go up.
Wow.
So she's always been education first. Her mom, her family, her parents were teachers. And when I said it, she was like, of course, because really I was making the decision to do it very shortly after my son was born.
Right.
And it
It's not
really,
becoming weird, or yeah.
it really hit me immediately to do it. And the most amazing part is, usually you make a decision like that and it's a long process to figure it out. You have to take tests. You have to do these application processes. But I did it. I decided one morning, and I think I applied within a day. And then I was able to get them to waive I forget the test that you have to take for most master's programs. But my experience in life and my undergraduate allowed them to basically waive the need to take the test. I think it's an ACT or something.
Okay.
And it was actually funny, because you had to have a 3.0 and be in the working world for such and such amount of years. And when I actually went back to my undergraduate transcript, I was like 2.94. So I was like, man, I was a bad student. But I was like, how the heck did that happen? But I wrote to the head of this decision. I just said, man, I'm so close. He's like, all right, waived. I'm like, oh, all right, great.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so I was in, and I started right away with the summer, and we're off to the races. But she never gave any grief whatsoever, because in her mind, it's the right kind of forward progress move. And it aligned with her belief system. It wasn't me going. The funny thing is, the more impactful thing for revenue growth internally is to be out several times a week meeting with people. She tends to have many more problems with that than with when I was doing it for school, which is funny, because that shows the education focus.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you're in a classroom, you're not having fun. Because the problem, I find this all the time. What I've found that I'm kind of good at in this phase that I'm in is going out, being with people, relationship building. Honestly, like, most business is talking about life and sports with people and building a rapport. And then all of a sudden, when they're ready, you're in the right room with a lot of people. And then when they're ready to do something, you're at the top of their mind and your company and its services.
Yeah.
And they come to you. And that's what podcasting is. So
It really is.
yeah,
It really is.
So it's very interesting that to be, when I'm out there, and it's not like I'm some rainmaker or anything like that. I hate when people or they'll always say in sales, I'm out hunting, you're out farming. And it's like, hunting is almost a macho thing, and farming's like,
Right.
you're back at the homestead,
Right. Yeah.
picking the vegetables. And,
Yeah.
But it really is fascinating to go through this little experiment. You're using what you are good at and what you've done as a hobby and for fun
Yeah.
is like a business development tool that's different than what the rest of the market is doing.
Mhm.
And so you have this moment where you're like a novel approach. And so that tends to be the hard part now. It's like you went to school. Now it's time to even out the nighttime. And you're like, I got to earn, but this is how you earn.
That's funny because like, and we'll get there now. Like you transitioned from a job that you were doing for about at least a decade, not more, right?
Yeah, like 12 years.
And then you went to this new career on entrepreneurship, and all this happened during the pandemic. All this happened during school. Like, I mean, obviously there's a risk factor in doing all this stuff, man. Because again, you got a family, you got a wife and 2 kids, and they rely on you and all this. And to make a sudden shift like this in the span of, a year or two from having a second kid to go to school, and now I'm gonna change a career now, pretty much. And I mean, what is it? What triggered that?
What triggered it was that I had reached the ceiling at my previous company,
Right.
And I always kind of kept quiet and expected people were out for your best interest and your progression.
Right.
What happens a lot, I've noticed pretty much everywhere I am, is what I was talking about before. The way I interact with the world is very collegial, very supportive. And what happens is when you then own the means of production and you can host people and give them a place to tell their stories, whether it's personal or in the business realm, it's a real game changer.
Right.
Because you're giving proof to their companies that they're out there doing their job too. When that happens, there ends up being a threat to the owners of the business because they say, ooh, this person's profile is moving beyond my own. And whether it's conscious or subconscious, it's way worse when it's subconscious when that happens, because now they're doing things with that subconscious playing that are limiting your growth or your potential. And there's almost in some ways they're taking a perverse joy a little bit in doing it. So that happens a lot. Now that happened there. During the pandemic, I went in to that company and the head of the company was still going in every day because there were servers there. Right. And hosting, and no one else was there. So like, whatever, I'll just go in there, oversee the servers, all that. And I went in on a holiday, one of those optional holidays, like Martin Luther King Day or something. And because I knew it'd be there, I knew things would be quiet. And I had a real heart-to-heart discussion that I actually need to earn a bit more here to make do. Forget what the market says I should make. But I need a path here to say that I'm not going to, you're basically paying out more than you're making. And that's not a good place to be, especially when you just shouldn't be in that position. So I went in and I finally said it. And the head of that company at that point said, all right, put it down to paper, send it to me. And I did that. Never heard anything. And I'd have people say, whoa, you got to keep pushing. And I said, no, that was my answer. If there's not an immediate response, that's as telling as an immediate response.
I agree with you 100%.
And so I was already in school, right, at this point. And the really good thing with school was that I realized that in certain respects, I was the head of the class because of the way of being entrepreneurial, of creating opportunities, of putting teams together and being almost a thought leader in certain ways. And it gave me a confidence that when you're in your smaller pool, you just think, okay, maybe if that's how they're seeing me, maybe I'm not that great. And not trying to say I am or whatever, but you just go, okay, all right, I'm humbled by that. Fine. If they're saying that. And then you get there and it's like every single person is trying to be on your team, is seeking you out for advice. I'm like, this is insane. So it gave me a real confidence boost. Mm-hmm. And then what I did is I happened at the time to be taking the Entrepreneurial 101 class. I went to school just to major in marketing because I was like, I'm going for all these corporate jobs. I was getting through interviews and then I wouldn't get the job. And someone would get the job and they had an MBA. And that was literally one of the reasons I was like, I'm going for the MBA then. Because if that's going to be a huge deal, and you would see in all these job things, MBA preferred, MBA necessary, mostly preferred. It's almost like when you go to a wedding and it's like black tie preferred. It's like, yeah, you got to go black tie. And so that's why I went. But then when I actually went to the school, I was so turned on. I wasn't even interested in the marketing. That was boring to me. I was turned on by the entrepreneurial aspects and the leadership. And the entrepreneur class I was taking at the time, every week was like a game-changing lesson. And one of the things you had to do was a 6-week process or project where you assessed your network tree of all the people.
Yeah.
You put together like up to 50 names of people who are in your network, and then you put them on a matrix and cross-reference against who in there knows other people on your list. And then you put 10 more entries of people you want to get to know and why you want to get to know them with the trajectory you want to go with your career. And then who on your existing list can get you to those people.
Right.
And what you end up coming out of that list is a real hard lesson on what we all assume our networks are so amazing. But I realized my network at that time was built on proximity. It was a +1 network, as I called it. It was a network via the boss at the time. Anyone I really knew was because of that boss and because of what I connected with from that, or my father. And I was like, ooh, I got to build my own network. Because if you're a +1, you're never going to be autonomous. They're always going to go back for a second word on you to the main network connector, or as they call it, the super connector. I said, I got to build my own. But one of the people on the list was someone I had worked with at this company I was at a decade before. And he left under difficult circumstances. And because of those circumstances, he kind of rode off and didn't talk to a lot of us anymore. And so this was 7 or 8 years later. And I just wrote him a LinkedIn message because part of the thing, it was following this network direction. I reached out to him. And he was like, oh, it's so great to hear you. We're going back and forth on family, all this.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, I was like, we should catch up. He goes, okay. He sent me a meeting link. We caught up. I literally just told him what I was doing, what I was looking to do. And in the background, I had also created my own LLC, my own company called Mix Minus LLC.
Right.
And I did that because I said to myself, all right, if my way out isn't a clear, get a corporate job, that's your way forward, then I have to build this in the shadow. I have to moonlight, as they call it.
Right.
And so I thought, let me set up an entity, and then anything that's done under those, that's not my day job, payments get sent there. And at least I've set up a company. And I have a business bank account. I have a business credit card. I did all the things you do when you start a business. And day one, no, actually, it's the opposite. Someone brought me one of these side projects for actually the Urban League of Essex County, which is interesting. And it was a 2-month promotional social media blitz for their big annual event.
Right.
And a friend of mine, business associate, brought that to me. And it was because I was going to get that. And then they said, okay, can you send us your social security number where we're going to send it? And I said, no. This is a site. I set up a business within an hour by Googling.
Wow. That's amazing.
So that I could respond to them by noon and say, here's my employee identification number. Here's the, here, I had official stuff. Because the minute they paid me, money went into that business account.
Yeah.
So day one, I had income secured to go into that business account by the time I set it up.
Right.
Then literally like a week later, I talked to this guy from the company, from my previous. He's like, well, we could use something like this. And my thought was, let me build up in this company. Let me equate to the salary I had at my previous company. And so I could walk away off of that. Or I have a threat to actually leave. And maybe they negotiate then because you have a real threat to leave.
Right.
But if I didn't have that, it's called a BATNA. It's a best agreement to negotiate, or best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Right.
It's a big negotiation term, BATNA. And if you're only as good as your BATNA, the hand you're holding. You know this in your card world.
Yeah.
And you don't want to bluff in this because you don't have a backup. So I was like, all right, at least I can focus on building the backup. So, by the way, when I went to that boss, all I was asking for was a 20% increase.
Right.
Which in most cases sounds like a ton.
He never answered
where I was at.
He never answered you back, ever?
No, never answered me back. But I did all this I started doing this. And so what happened was that money from the Urban League came in. And I saw money in the account. It was like, whoa, that is so cool.
It's the reason when you see that, it's like, whoa, okay, I could do this. I think I could do this.
Then I talked to this guy. Within 2 days, I was already interviewing with that company about a role. And immediately after that interview, they're like, all right, let's go. Let's start going. We'll start doing this on the side. And so I'm now working for 2 companies full time.
Mm-hmm.
Only in a remote world can you do that, but it was still unbelievably overwhelming because I'm working 2. I'm going to school at night. I'm doing that other thing I got.
Still dad. Still.
I was going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
But now the income was like for a second insane because it's just and going to this place reset my number because they're like, all right, what's your hourly? I'm like, I don't know. What's a typical hourly? And they're like, oh, between this and this. I'm like, all right, just take the higher. All of a sudden I just doubled my essential hourly was in a salary. And so I'm doing this and it was like leading different lives. You're stretched thin. It was brutal in that sense. And then you're starting to come to terms with, oh my God, this decision is upon me so fast now. What do I do next?
And that's the thing too. Also, you have a chance to really settle and to trick yourself. It kind of forced your hand. Like once you made that decision to talk to your boss and he didn't say anything and then everything else happened. It's like, okay, it's just like boom, 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 let's go. And then like everything happened such a fast way that you have time to ponder. It's like, you know what, embrace it and let's go.
No, that's what it was. It almost became like a video game. And you play the one night where you play like Grand Theft Auto till 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. And so it was a real anxiety. And plus you're onboarding in a new place with all new people in a whole global company. And you automatically assume they're light years ahead of where you were, which was a very localized, homogenous group, North Jersey. Big, they swung big for sure. But this was now like a global enterprise dealing with Fortune 100 companies, essentially. And so there's that. You're in a constant mode. And so then what happened was getting these signals that you were wanted on the market was huge. It was great because I always assume the worst of myself because then you can never be let down. But then sometimes it means you undervalue your market value.
Right.
Which is not the end of the world to me. I'm not some zero-sum game, Gordon Gekko, Wall Street.
Yeah, right.
Like I got to go for everything, which is a huge baby boomer thing. And that's why it's hard for parents sometimes to counsel their kids because they're full on, everything is mine. I take the whole pie.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh no, there's opportunities are boundless. We're just going to, you could use a little bit of that, but so then what happened is this could only go on so long. And so I talked back to my friend and who's a partner at this company now. That's why things move so quick. I was like, he's like, how's everything going? I'm like, dude, if I could be nice, I'm drowning. And he's like, well, you're doing a great job. And this might have been like 2 weeks after I started or something. Mm-hmm. And then I got on a meeting with the partners and they're like, we'd like you to go full time here. And I was like, okay, wow, that was quick. And going full time there.
This is the course where you're at now.
That's where I'm at now. Yeah.
Conabos, right.
Conabos. And so they're like, we'd like you to go full time. Now, since it's a Canadian company built on a contracting base, they still pay me once a month to my company. So it's almost a business on training wheels in some ways.
Yeah.
They give you essentially it's almost like a retainer. They give you the customers, they give you the projects. You also can work in your various ways, podcasting, webinars, going to events,
Yeah.
building up a profile to develop business. I almost liken what I do in the industry to like a Peter King type or an Adrian Wojnarowski, where you're on the ground, you're kind of all knowing because you're talking to people all the time. So currency becomes information, and then that information base makes people come to you, and then you go, oh, you want to come on the show, you want to come on this, and they think, I mean, you are in a way, but you're doing them a favor. You're helping them push their ideas and their businesses and all that. And so that happened. And when I always like to say, when all I was asking for at the previous place was a 20% increase. And by the way, my wife being a teacher and administrator, we already have health insurance.
Which is great.
I've always used her health insurance.
Yeah.
So it's not even like the whole benefits and the health insurance was a huge thing there. I was asking for a 20% increase, which would still be under market, but at least it would cover my bases. By doing this move, I got a 100% increase. So within 1 month, within a quarter of that first meeting where I got no answer, I changed my fortunes that much. And I was working with a place which is hard to trust, that's very caring. And
did you leave immediately, or did you?
I had to. No, I had to. I probably could have. I probably could have kept the charade a little bit going, but ethically, it was just a mess. And I also didn't want to be bogged down
right
in the other place. I saw the opportunity. So I also had the pillow company going at the same time. So there's like a mix. There's like a portfolio of things, and now you can focus.
I'm a customer, so yeah, I know.
Nice. I love it. So now there's a portfolio to focus on and do different things.
Yeah.
So I did move on. That was a very tough call. Even though I had been spurned, it was tough to call and be like, I'm leaving. And I couldn't really say where I was leaving for, because it would have been it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but it would have been a real problem if I led with, I was going to this place with the guy who used to be in our company, who everything was left under really.
What was the reaction? Did they try to convince you to stay?
No. And so that was good to me. Now,
Clean
they might
break.
have, but I really led with entrepreneurial opportunities, the pillow company being a big part of it.
Right.
At the point we were looking at factories in Austin, since we have a factory in Southern California, but there was a lot of things at the time happening. Mm-hmm. I had that other Urban League thing that was still running a bit. I was into it. So it ended up being much of the Conobos thing, but I led with that because I just wanted it was time to go. So I think that came across that there wasn't really a play. I was done. To me, not answering me in a time of need, and when I put together something, to not answer me was like, first world problem criminal. But it was the greatest non-answer I had, and so
some would say downright disrespectful. Honestly, better you tell me no than don't answer me at all.
That's right. And the funniest thing was there was a lot of institutional knowledge being there over a decade. Mm-hmm. They still had to keep me on in a contractor position to handle certain things I think I was officially kind of cut off the mix a year later.
So you technically were still getting money.
I was still getting some money from there.
Good.
Even though I was done, it was really, for me, I like to focus. That's the hard part with the entrepreneurial thing, is typically in this world, there's the idea people, and then there's the implementers. There's I think it was Savannah Guthrie's husband. I was in a conference room with him once because we did work with the now governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy.
Phil Murphy, yeah.
When he was doing his 501c3, which in a lot of political places is kind of your pre-campaign campaign. Mm-hmm. So you do like a nonprofit that is a think tank, as they say.
Right.
They were trying to say we're a do tank, but you put out all of the things you believe in through content, through podcasts, through all this. So it's this is what the package would look like. Yeah. Should we turn? So because the idea was that he was ultimately going to probably be governor, you'd have some serious like yearly, quarterly meetings that we as the consultants for the digital would go to. And so like I'm in a conference room with like heads of banks, Savannah Guthrie's husband, who's a political guy.
Yeah.
And I remember getting the coffee and the like Danish at our break. And he said something that always stuck with me. He's like, there's two jobs in a business. There's the job of the person who brings the food, and then there's the job of the group who digests the food. He's like, I bring the food. And so you see this a lot in the entrepreneurial world where many are good at bringing the food, and the food can be customers, ideas that lead to products.
Right.
But to digest it is a whole different world. It's operations, it's delivery. And oftentimes the bringer has a short attention span and is on to the next idea and then the next customer.
Right.
And so I had to learn to lean into that skill because I'm somewhere in the middle, but delivering the thing had always been my role. And you always got scared doing the bringing part because all your mind was on, oh my God, how are we going to deliver it? So you almost have to have them separated like church and state in a way because otherwise you won't get the crazy promises of huge business. But then on the flip side, you won't get the delivery of the promise. And so they need to be, so I had to learn that part and trust in time and ability of a team to fill in those quotients. So that has always been a struggle. It's why I was so fearful of having so many of those jobs at the same time. Too bad ChatGPT didn't come out 2 years earlier.
Right.
So, that to me that's been a big thing. And I think once you start to lean into that part and have faith in the delivery, that's just where unbounded growth and potential happens. I like to say it's like being on the water and all the lily pads. You want to, as much as you can, go lily pad to lily pad.
Yeah.
And get your legs in there only if you truly believe that thing is the one to go for. Because lily pad to lily pad for many of us is enough with our expertise, what we're supposed to bring to the mix. If you got to go in the water too much, you'll drown. And so that to me has been the really tough part, decoupling the promise, the ideas, the aspirations from the perspiration.
This should be a motivation for people. This podcast, like you don't have to be stuck in a situation. You can always, despite whatever challenges may come your way, they can use inspiration to like find other things to do, or find other paths, whatever it may be. Look, you could have just said, screw it. I'm stable, I'm at now. I have 2 kids, a wife, and I want to shake up the apple cart, of course. But you decide to do these things at a time where it's probably the height of stress. 2 kids, newborn, just born, starting school, pandemic. So all these things, it should tell you that no matter what, if you put your mind to it, you can achieve what you put your mind to.
You can, and it takes a lot
example.
you take a lot of, I'm going to share something that we should share with people in this.
Okay. So
when the episode goes out, maybe in the notes, this is a phenomenal article about how to do this. And it was this is what was great about school, by the way, in business school, is that your reading for the week is like a New Yorker article by Malcolm Gladwell. And so the article I shared is called The 6 Degrees of Lois Weisberg.
You're still a subscriber, right?
I am.
I really, and we'll talk about content in a second, because you and I are massive content guys in terms of like not just doing, but also intaking content. But I'm trying to find a way. I'm trying to find a reason to pony up money to pay for the New Yorker, because I love their work. I do.
Yeah. Now the New York, I love it, and I get the student rate. If you could get the student rate, it's like half. It's more than worth it. It'll keep you reading all week, and I get so much from it. Yeah. I get 15 things from each story, and they're not even about what the title of the story's about. But this one
Right.
is an actual lesson it was one of the readings for a week in between class. It's called 6 Degrees of Lois Weisberg. It's written by Malcolm Gladwell back in 99. And it's just about this super connector in Chicago
Right.
who just connected with everybody. She connected with someone she sees at a light driving their bike. She connects with the heads of City Hall. She just connects. And then when things need to be done at any point in time, for any reason, she knows who to put together to make it happen. And so I took so much from this because I look at all the realms in our life, and we're taught in some ways to put a wall between our personal life, our professional life, in terms of the day. I'm going to work 9 to 5. I'm going to cut off. I'm going to be with my kids. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. To me, you're winning if you can completely connect your personal and your private. Your personal and your professional. And so I've kind of, when you think of all the realms you're in, if you keep your ears open and your eyes open, there can be answers to be had across all those realms from people you come across. And all of these made up walls don't really matter if you can get the thing done at the end of the day. And so that really changed my world to a degree I can't even explain, where you can have a guest you meet from business and you're like, ooh, I really want you on my personal podcast. I love what you have to say here. You can, I'm on the board member of the local education foundation. I can connect those worlds. I can connect being a parent to a business lesson. To me, that is where magic happens, is in combination innovations. When you can combine different worlds, when you can analogize, it makes the world smaller and it connects more people. And by the way, when you meet people, it makes it, not that you're doing it for this reason, but it makes you more of an alluring character. If you're in I found myself in a conference last in Florida in St. Pete's at this like pink monolithic 1900s resort. I found myself in a room in January with 20 to 25 CEOs of the industry I'm in from all around the world, putting their phones down for 2 days to talk about business. And I'm just sitting there. I had the same feeling I had when I worked for the Nets. I'm like, what the heck am I doing on this plane? But there's a reason you're there. And I found my reason is to tell people stories. Yeah. It's to memorialize moments and ideas at points in time, and to understand how to stage it. Yeah. And when I found out that that's a valuable service, I'm a keynote speaker at this event in January. I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. So do what you do and lean in and constantly connect, because podcasting is about connecting. Webinars are about connecting.
That's how we met, man. I mean, right. we've known each other. I think we know each other about 8 years ish.
I think so.
I mean,
let's see when the Perlman episode was in
2014. That came out.
Okay. Yeah,
so and I found you based on the episode that he appeared on your podcast. Jeff Perlman, very, very popular sports writer, and author. And then we kind of linked up, just like, we linked up on social media. We talked to each other, came on your podcast, I think in 2017 after Donald Trump got elected. And we've had a pretty decent friendship ever since then. And it's funny, this medium, I'm so passionate about this medium. I've been doing this 12 years now. And just the connectivity of people, people I've never met in person yet. I've known for like probably about a decade doing this show. But
absolutely,
but they're regular staples in my life now because of this medium and the power of connectivity. I'm a firm believer in that, man. I'm a firm believer in that.
No, this thing is unbelievable. Just
Yeah.
the ability for the medium to capture conversations that are happening.
Yeah.
And I always love looking at the analytics and thinking this conversation I'd have anyway
Yeah.
had hundreds of listens.
Yes, exactly.
And so it was a product. It served
Mm-hmm.
it served a purpose, even if that purpose was putting someone. I always like to say to people, there's so many reasons to have these things and to consume these things. Some are meant to be so boring they put you to sleep at night. They're serving a purpose,
Yeah.
and it's like we've always said this, but the canvas of time you can spend with this is the most available of any medium.
Yeah.
You could do it during anything. You can, anytime. Video, you have about 2 to 3 hours a day at most. And, if you're probably not going to watch YouTube, you're probably going to watch Game of Thrones, right? You're going to watch like highly scripted stuff that's so well done. The buy-in on this is so much less. If you have good gear, people can just listen while they're doing the dishes, while they're running, while they're watching their kids with one earbud in, while they're literally driving was the clear one. That's really where a lot of it starts. It is the most available bandwidth to fill.
And for me, it's been my therapy, man, more than anything else. And I have to admit, you've actually been an influence on me in some degree in how I've shifted the way I've embraced podcasting in the 12 years I've been doing it. When I entered this game, it was solely sports focused. It was only about sports. I was doing this. I wanted to be like, Dan Lebertar, Bonnie Jones, that kind of thing. That was my focus. And as you get into this world, you start realizing that it doesn't have to be just one way. And then as your life broadens, you get married, you have children, and all these other things. You get older. I realized that you can actually have all the things you love to do, and broaden your entire way of thinking and make it part of the stuff you put out to the world. Like your show is very similar to mine in a lot of ways now. Like all the things I'm interested in: tech, pro wrestling, sports, politics, life in general, parenting, minimalism for me. I now have a place now where I have something for someone. And I gotta admit, like in meeting you and listening to your show for years, I'm a huge fan of your podcast. That was actually one of the kind of an inflection point for me, actually, where because there was a time where I got a little burnt out on just doing one thing. I was like, okay, yeah, Eli Manning, okay, but that doesn't stimulate me like it used to. Like now I want to talk about politics, I want to talk about this and that, and I realized listening to people like you and other folks that were maybe in the same medium as I am. Yeah, you can do that. You can actually have the best of all the worlds.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And you have to think of a podcast in 3 dimensions or maybe 360 degree, where just think of it as a diary with viewership. And what's cool about a diary mostly is when people can access it 40 years later.
Yeah.
Or a year after you pass, or so to me, the part with this that's fascinating is the second life of it. I like to talk about topical things if they align with my knowledge and interests. And if I spent a ton of time, like around the election, I did 2 because I just happened to spend 6 hours each day with this content.
You mean this past election?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, why not it's all there. Just put it out. And it's one of those like boxes that people put in the ground, right? And then you open it up, the school opens it up 20 years later and there's like a Pokemon card in there or something. And to me, the fascinating thing, if my kids even care, is to listen to this in such high fidelity and to hear what I thought about when they were little kids, when my son was born, when people had cell phones, when like all of to me, it's how it's the source material to be memorialized is fascinating. Even looking back over 10 years, that there are, 390 or so diary entries that span this 10 years of my life, and some of them that go back in time and span, like it would be really cool to make a continuum if someone, maybe ChatGPT or an otter could transfer, where you could like build the continuum of your life through the stories in your podcast.
Yeah.
And that to me is, looking at the downloads tomorrow, it can't be the important thing anymore.
No.
Seeing the way the thing moves, seeing how things come back, like when you re-release episodes that are out of the 100, because a lot of these podcast platforms only keep the most recent 100 episodes in their directory. So if you can go back now,
I think Apple stopped that though after a while.
I think I saw that they still had it for me.
Maybe they are still doing it. I know Spotify for a while didn't do it. Now they're doing it now.
Yeah, now they're doing it. Yeah. But that is interesting to me too, because the re-release aspect, and then the seasons of life being very similar.
And you've been doing it actually like a lot too. It's funny because like with your podcast especially too, like you've been doing it 10 years. I remind you I was on your show on Tuesday that you just really I think just passed your 10-year anniversary. I don't think you knew that.
Yeah, I think it's September 19th.
So it's close. We're close in somewhere, but yeah, like you doing 10 years, and like going back into your directory. I remember back in the day when I first met you, you were doing the show at least twice a week consistently, and then it goes down to once a week, and then from once a week goes to once every 2 weeks, then once a month, and the next you know you're getting an episode once every 6 months, and again that's not a judgment.
No,
that's a reality of we just discussed in the first 30 minutes of the podcast. You've been busy, and reflects on that. But when you do come and do a show, it's impactful because like you have a lot to say.
It's cool. Yeah, it's cool. And I have to remember sometimes to keep re-releasing so that it's keeping it there. But I noticed in the most recent one that I re-released, which was it was to the day of when I released 6 years previous, like it was September. Because I find if you release around the same dates, the evergreen aspect is especially timely because you're talking about the same summer activities, the same school starting, all this.
Right.
And I also noticed that there was so much talk in that one about what we just talked about, the ceiling I felt like I was hitting where I was. Am I going to break through? Am I going to do this? I thought it would be really interesting to take clips and then bring them into the current day and be like, son, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're going to, because that's what the name of the game is, as they say, IP, intellectual property and source material. With source material, you can do anything.
Yeah.
You can, and then as technology gets better and new innovations come, like generative AI, you can take that source material and repurpose it into modern day content in other mediums.
Absolutely.
And the world is yours. And I had this idea, which I still have to finish, where I treated the first 10 episodes of the pandemic, and I wanted to make a book where each episode was a chapter.
Yeah, I remember you told me that actually.
Of living through the pandemic. And I have several of them done. I just got to finish it and do it. But then I was like, oh, you could write a book about mix minus LeBron James over the years and have all the entries of when you talked about LeBron James over 10 years. Right. And there's so many of these topics that come back around again and it's very little overhead to create them in different formats now. And so you almost have to do it. You have to give second life to it. You have to think of it like a remix all the time. Like I could take that old song, rap over it now, or any which way. Like, and then when you go back in time, I always found this with creating music too. When I was creating music, when I was like 16 or 18 or into my 20s, my music was completely informed by the bands I loved at the time. And at that time, I would be like, oh, that band is going to feel like we're completely ripping them off,
Yeah.
right? When I listen to it 10, 15, 20 years later, it sounds fresh as heck. And it's like, wow. Most things are people just trying to imitate others, especially in music.
Yeah.
And through that imitation, you learn the dynamics of how to do it. And then you're able to put your voice over it.
Yeah.
Like Gladwell, we talked about the 10,000 hours. At some point, you get your own voice. And you need to go through those stages to get there. And by the way, people like going back and hearing when you were trying to find it too. That's its own form of entertainment.
Yeah.
So source material.
You build a clientele, you build a following, build a fan base. People are going to want to listen to your stuff beyond just in the immediate. Also, they'll go to the archives and stuff. That's what it's there for. It's the best medium. Speaking of music, though, you recently saw Metallica.
Yeah.
And up in MetLife Stadium, night 2. First time seeing them live?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell sometimes because you see so many videos now and you forget, was I there or was I not? And videos often can be really good.
Yeah, of course.
It was the first time I saw them live. Yeah.
That's hard to believe, though. They tore that area pretty common.
So I was never really a metalhead growing up. And
Really?
Yeah, I was more like hardcore punk.
Oh, okay. You're on the other side. Okay.
All that. And Metallica was kind of a nice to have from that point of view. It was like, it can inform some things, but it wasn't your sweet spot. And really, as I've gotten older, I've appreciated them a lot more. Mm-hmm. And even just the business story of them and the doing it this long, and they're great content, even being interviewed. Most musicians are not great being interviewed.
Oh, dude, they're the best. I might not be biased on that either, but like and you and I can relate to this because you and I both been in bands before in the past. I've always said that Metallica of any music act in the history of music, based on what I've seen, and because I'm a really diehard fan of theirs, I actually have a little even more insight into how they operate as a business. They have probably the most organized business model into how to be a band and to make yourself interesting within your ecosystem of any band or artist I've ever seen in history of music. And
maybe Taylor Swift, but
we're going 42 years down this now. You know, the way they've built their kind of army and this whole ecosystem and to make themselves interesting, the fan club thing, and the way they put the products out, and even for the fans, it's so interesting. Even today, like they have this thing called the Metallica Black Box, and they do a thing where I did put the article. I put it in a second. I read that actually. It's a really, really good article.
It was all about this.
Fantastic. Yeah, and they just did one recently on Saint Anger. Saint Anger's 20th anniversary this past summer, and they have all the stuff related to Saint Anger in the vault. So not just music, but also like notes, songwriting stuff, photos, maybe clips of them in the studio working on music and stuff. Interviews, side interviews, all that. Just the way they present their product, as an artist, beyond just okay, here's a song, here's an album, blah blah blah. See you in 5 years. No, it's the way they present themselves all the way through. To me, I think it's the most organized model I've ever seen in music.
No, it's very good, and I mean, the way they were early on fighting Napster, and everyone thought they were a buzzkill. Yeah. The way they held off with the streamers, and then by the time coming to the streamers, it became like a big get, as opposed to just being in the streaming services from the beginning. They could make an announcement about coming to it. So they do a lot right. I loved in the New Yorker article about them how I can't believe Robert's been there like 20 years now.
20 years even. Yep.
It's crazy, but I'm used to growing up in bands, and you try out in bands and it's like, all right, let's go for a beer. I think it was in that article. It said he had $2 million dropped into his account the minute he was chosen.
Correct. Yeah. It's under some kind of monster movie, actually.
It's crazy.
It is nuts, isn't it?
I mean, and because they're winning, like there's always the thought with musicians, and even writers and all that, but mostly musicians, that they have to be starving to be great. Because when you stop starving, or when your belly gets full, when you find all the love, when you get everything you've ever needed, you lose the need to emotionally emanate creation. But they're like a business. They don't. They keep going. They keep being fresh. They keep delivering. And
His York right here. Yeah,
it is great.
New Yorker.
I mean,
The
it's,
enduring metal. You see it? You see it on the screen? You see it?
yep, the
Yeah,
enduring
the
metal
enduring
genius of
metal
Metallica.
Metallica. Yeah. And I'll tell you what. Look, Lars may not have handled it the best way possible in terms of Napster, in terms of the optics, but he was correct all along. It wasn't ever about the streaming. They took a song. People forget Napster took an unfinished song that was somehow leaked somewhere and put it out to the masses. It wasn't even a finished song. It was "I Disappear." By the way, at the time it wasn't finished yet. It was still it had been mastered or mixed yet at that point. And they'd asked them to take it down. They said no. That's what triggered Metallica to do what they did. But I think what people piss about Metallica more than anything else is that the way Lars handled the whole thing, kind of like an arrogant rock star kind of thing, is why they reacted the way they did. The fans reacted the way they did. But in the end, they were correct on that.
Yeah.
Lars found the sword. Lars found the sword for all these artists.
Well, the coolest thing of going to the concert was, first of all, I was getting very sick, and I just pretended I wasn't sick, and I was able to get through it. But I really don't care about the opening bands much. That's the thing with metal. Like, most of the time, I'm not going to like the other bands.
Was it Pantera there?
No, the second one, it was that 5 Finger Death Punch.
Death Punch. Oh, okay.
Band.
Not a big fan of it. Not a big fan of this personally, but
yeah, and I'm fine with. I was fine enough with Pantera, but honestly, my sweet spot with heavy was that metal tinged hardcore. That was always my thing. And they have breakdowns, and they have like that's my thing. And so, but Metallica, I totally appreciate. But it was funny because my wife Melanie and I went to that concert, and I didn't even need to see the starter bands. So we got there at 6, which is when the thing started. We parked near the old Izod Center where the Nets used to play, which is now American Dream, the big water park or whatever, a big Mall of America type of deal.
Ah, okay.
And we parked. We had gotten Smash Burger on the way down. Put the Tesla in park, and sat, shared a bottle of wine.
Wow.
Ate our Smash Burger, and watched The Bear on the Tesla screen.
Nice.
On Hulu. And we watched the whole episode. It was great. It was comfortable. It was our form of tailgating. And we meandered ourselves very nicely over to the stadium. Got one more drink there, and we're right in time to see Metallica. It was like a perfect night for me.
Dude, you're lucky, man. I've seen him 4 times. I saw him in 97. I saw him in 99, 2004, 2017. And, unfortunately, not coming down here. I had it in mind to try to go to one of these shows on this tour, like either Jersey, buddy, one of my best friends from high school, who's a hardcore fan. And I showed you a video. He lives down here in South Florida. He flew to the Montreal show, both Montreal shows, the week after the New Jersey shows. He does that normally. Last tour in 2018 for Hardwired, he flew to Sweden to see him. What he does is he integrates his love for travel with Metallica's tour schedule. So I'm going to go to Sweden. Well, I'm going to go to Sweden to see Metallica, and I'm going to go to Sweden in the process. Same with Canada, and he's going to see him in Detroit, not Detroit. He's going to see him again at some point in the store also too. So no, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool though. Yeah, you're lucky you get to see him in the store. I did see them on screen, but it's not the same. It's not the same being there in person. God.
It was very good. It was very good.
You mentioned content real quick. So The Bear, I need to watch that, dude. I need to watch that show.
It's very good. Melanie loves it like a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. It's a great show. It's weird though. There's no TV shows right now currently that I'm dying to watch next. Like
TV shows,
even that I'm watching now. Like I'm just not, and I don't think it has anything to do with the strike. I don't think it has any. For whatever reason, there are not shows that are intensely resonating with me. That was a very good show. The problem is, it was one of those that I watch with Melanie exclusively. We always watch it right before going to bed, and so it ends up taking 5 days to finish like a 35-minute episode.
What? That long?
Well, because one of us falls asleep within
Even for half an hour show?
5 minutes. Well, we're just so tired. If you start watching at 10, it's like,
jeez, oh my god,
and you're in bed watching it, like you just go. It's a very good show though.
Yeah,
and
I need to watch it.
it's quick. It's surprising. It does things in season 2 that blow your mind. Like 5 major actors just show up in the one episode of a flashback to the family.
Oh wow, okay.
Like like it's the weirdest thing, and they're just family members in a flashback episode. There's one episode where the cousin goes to work at like a 5-star restaurant for a week so that he could get upskilled to be able to do the restaurant they're trying to build. Mm-hmm. And he walks into the back, and the head of that restaurant is Olivia Colman. Like, she's just in the show. It's like so there's something about the people writing this show and running it that they're humming at a higher level than anyone even understands. And that they can just like humble brag in Olivia Colman or Jamie Lee Curtis or Oliver Platt, is in it. Like it's really the brother is John, the Punisher guy, John Bernthal.
John Burnham, right? Yeah.
Bernthal, like it's just worth watching. You'll get through it so quick.
No, I saw. That's the only show, honestly. That's the only scripted show, honestly, that I have to say that I haven't watched yet. I want to watch. Other than that, there's no really any scripted shows that I'm like vying or trying to see hardcore. Like, honestly, I've been in documentary's been my thing, like a lot in the last like year or so. Whether it's in sports, whether it's in politics, or my content I do on YouTube. I watch YouTube videos a lot. I watch like my daily content, like sports, like talk shows, or or my political shows I watch every day, whatever. I watch it in bite size on YouTube now. Honestly, YouTube took over my life last year and a half. Honestly, YouTube Premium to me is probably for me, because I put more I watch most of my content on that platform. Is probably the best $17 a month I spend.
Yeah, and I have the student rate, which is about 7. But the problem is, I ran the life out on my main Google account, where they're like, all right, you're no longer a student at this point. So I had to start up a new Gmail and get student credentialed so that can start the timeline again. But now I have a fresh YouTube with no idea of who I am as a person. So I'm in that phase where I'm not getting yet the content that actually resonates with me as it learns my profile.
Yeah.
So that's the only downside, but it allowed me to get it back at $7 a month. And then the student for NFL Sunday Ticket was good. But I think, again, like Only Murders in the Building is really trending. Melanie really likes that. We watched that. I'm fine with it.
Is that on Netflix? Was that on?
No, it's on Hulu, and it's got Martin Short and Steve Martin. It just kind of took things over. It's about a podcast, actually.
Really?
It's a little bit of a satire about a true crime podcast.
Okay.
About a building in New York City where there's a murder, and then like Steve Martin and Martin Short and this what's her name? Is it not Selena Gomez? Selena, can't think of her.
Selena.
I'll tell you who it is. It's Selena Gomez. It is Selena Gomez.
Okay.
She's in it too. And they start a podcast to talk about the murder in their building. It's a good premise. And I mean, it's got major people in it, and it always seems to be trending like number one. Like right now, the new season came out. I have not opened Disney Plus to watch one show in
I haven't either.
God knows how long, which is a terrible indictment.
That's for the kids.
But it started strong, like where we were watching shows. I'm just not that hooked to the
I
Marvel and Star Wars universe. I'm just not that hooked.
I think I know why though too. Also, I think you and I are probably in the same boat. And I think we discussed it even on the last show we did together a couple of years ago. It remains true, if not more so now. I think content is so overwhelming at this point. It's so much because for me anyway, even with podcasts, like I found a ways now to stay informed with podcasts that I do like. So I listen to their shows in bite size on YouTube instead. If they put out clips for the shows instead of the entire 2-3 hour episodes, like Joe Rogan, for example, I'll listen to in clips unless it's of someone I'm really want to listen to. But I'm now overwhelmed by content now, and I still want to put out content on top of that too. So it's harder to navigate all that. Even it's I would say it's harder even more now in 2023 than it was in 2019 when we discussed it.
Yeah, I still try to check in on Just Watch, the app and the website, justwatch.com, just to see what everyone's watching, and then to see if that from that I can make a decision. So I'm trying this.
Just Watch?
Just Watch, yeah. It's a great show, and it'll tell you by popularity at any one moment in a 24-hour period what everyone's watching.
Okay.
Across all the apps in streaming. So Dark Winds is up there. I'm trying to watch that. It's like a true crime story in the Indian territories in the 1970s.
Right.
The Taylor Sheridan shows are always trending. He's killing it. You know, Yellowstone. He's got this Special Ops Lioness. He's got that show with. He's owning the Paramount Plus thing. He's got the show with Sylvester Stallone that I started watching, which was interesting. The Tulsa one. You know, the Bears up there, which is great. I started watching Billions again because I heard I had stopped right when Damian Lewis left.
I need to start this show.
And nothing kept me going. And then I heard Damian Lewis has come back for this. And so I got back into it because you know what? It's not an A+ show, but it's within my interest and it's a really good show. And it's got good storylines. It keeps you up. It's good. So even in this half of the season or full season that Damian Lewis isn't there, they got Corey Stoll as the main guy. Paul Giamatti's still there. It's good. So I've been watching that basically once a night. Hijack, I watched. That was interesting.
And that's on where?
That's on Apple TV.
Okay.
Apple TV Plus. And it's got what's his name? Stringer Bell.
Shoot.
Idris Elba.
Yeah.
And
my wife loves him, so my wife's in love with him.
It's a good one, and it's shot beautifully. It's 8 episodes and out, and it's just about a plane hijacking the whole show. Like one, and he's a master business negotiator. Is it the best show ever? No, in fact, 87% rating, but hey, it's good. It's got star power. It's beautifully shot, and it's moving. But I'm just not, and I don't get a fill from watching sports clips and shows as much anymore. I actually watch Sports Center. I try to watch that each morning just so I can be aware of the stories. And it's funny, like I'll watch it and I'll put together a couple of notes just to put in there, which maybe I can talk about down the line. Like last night, Scherzer against Verlander. That's interesting. That's an ability to talk about the Mets. Then I saw the Nick Bosa with his deal. And then it made me lead down to, oh, that's pretty cool. The Bosa brothers are 2 of the 4 highest paid pass rushers in the history of the game. That's crazy, cool for their family, which then led me to, oh my God, what's the tax like that, both in California, and how much money would they be getting back if they were in Texas, like all these tech companies? And then you could talk about the tech companies doing that and move into Texas. And then, and Joe Rogan, you know, 12, like I was doing the math on the Bosa thing. $10 million over the life of the contract in taxes he has to pay living in California versus living in a 0 income tax state.
It's insane.
So that's kind of where I go with those. And then, you know, I'll throw on, since I have NFL TV now and again in the mix, I'll throw on that Good Morning Football. That's decent. I get bored though when people talk about one sport the whole time and aren't allowed. Like Mad Dog's show on baseball is good, but I like it almost before the season starts to get up to speed in the 30 days. I don't like watching it day by day. I hate when people can't connect across sports.
Right. So you're pretty much done with like day-to-day sports like talk every day.
Yeah. I'll still listen to Bill Simmons.
But I wouldn't even consider him day to day either. He does a show
No,
Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He still leaves some room to breathe.
but he's regular. Like
Right.
he's regular. I still, when that pops in, I'll still listen to it. Podcasts, though, I don't really listen to many podcasts anymore. I still listen to Howard Stern a ton to get through that. I listen to articles now instead of reading them. Like I'll listen to New Yorker articles. I'll listen to Atlantic articles.
I'm
I'll
getting back to
listen to The
that too. Also,
Economist.
I'm getting back into the reading again now. I'm getting a little burnt out on the podcasting to some degree. I'm starting to get back into reading. Wanting to read books. I still have Audible books I've queued. I've ordered the last like 2 years. I haven't finished yet. I want to get to that. You know. So even I think that I'm still kind of in the day-to-day sports to some degree, but I'm starting to become more precise on which shows I choose to listen to in clips and not, instead of doing this the whole damn thing, just clip this, and then next thing you know, I have 5 hours gone just listening to content like of stuff that really doesn't really matter in the grand scheme. You know what I mean? So I'd rather pick a couple shows here and there. I'll click and that's it.
Yeah, sports. I have to watch primetime, and I have to watch it on Sunday night or at the latest Monday morning. If I don't watch it by then, I don't watch it. But if I can watch NFL primetime Sunday night, I feel good. I love that show so much.
I failed last year. When it came back, I was fired up for it. I watched every night, every Sunday night.
Yeah.
But I failed last year. I failed because again, same thing. You have other things to watch too on top of that. So I get it, man. I get it. So I'm trying navigating all that shit's hard though.
It is. I need it because even though I have the Sunday ticket, I still predominantly watch Red Zone channel.
Me too.
But with the multi-grid view, I'll put on the Red Zone on one, and then I'll put on a couple of the other main games on the other. But then the hard thing becomes I can't put the Giants in that mix because they're blacked out. So the Red Zone almost it gets really difficult because then I end up not watching the local teams for the whole game. And then what's the point? What's the point of just watching Red Zone if it's essentially just a highlight show? And the thing with Red Zone, they're not really in real time. So like
no, they're not.
It'll score and all you're doing is watching 8 hours of a highlight show. And so you lose the intricacies of a defensive battle. You lose the intricacies of, or the nuance of what trending things overall with the team outside of scoring. And that to me that's a hard thing to square. And so what I like to do, I'll put a bunch on, maybe I'll put the local game on my iPad with me to have that on. And then that's why watching primetime is great because it fills in the blanks on everything else. But that gets very overwhelming because if I'm going to want to talk about it, you have to be very specific in what part of it you're going to talk about. You have to almost be very shallow or very based on the main offensive players. Or if something sticks out in the box score, it's like, oh my God, that guy had 13 tackles. But you definitely lose the continuity. And that's why you ever notice, that's why I think Colin Cowherd only watches Red Zone channel, but then they'll talk about the primetime game because everybody's watching that whole in whole.
Right. Correct.
And then you talk about the Monday primetime game on Tuesdays. So there are ways around that. And then you can use that moment to talk about a team because you saw them in that whole game, and then you can stitch together the Red Zone parts about what happened with them or the storylines over the previous. But you have to be, it's not quite free and easy.
No.
And then like we said in the last podcast, by the time the 4:00 games come, I'm even barely red zoning with those. Like it's on.
Yeah, I'm the same way too. Like it's on. Like 1:00, I'm fired up. Let's go. 1:00, boom, boom. And by 4, I gotta wind down a little bit because the kids got to take a bath, they got to get dinner ready, this and stuff. And so I'm still watching 4:00 games, but it's more on the side. It's more like on a back burner. It's more like a background noise. 8:00, I might watch the game if I'm interested in the game. But I'm in a place now. As much as I love football, I do get burned out now. By 8:00, I'm done.
Yeah. So tonight will be great. Having a good game on just to watch it again. Yeah, but I really pick and choose by my own interest in the day, if or how I talk about it. Yeah. I don't want to just blindly say I'm always going to talk about it on Monday What if I had like, what if we went apple picking? What if we went and is it really like, it's not my job. So
But not only that, like your podcast has not really been that way for years now. So to be honest, you already transition yourself out of that sports only or sports centric show. Even to some degree with my show, to some degree, I do have, like I said, I do have like episodes a week where I do with my friends that will talk about it, like, but I don't prioritize it about my solo shows anymore like I used to because I have a section to do that with my friends. So
that's right. That's right. So that's, and then there's the piece of like the Mike Francesa part where you talk about everything, but you make sure the things you're not interested in, you bring on guests who know the stuff.
I have to admit, I've cooled off on Princess the last couple months. I don't know why. Again, it goes back to the whole YouTube thing. I'm more on YouTube now than I've been on
Yeah,
my
he's not on
podcast
there.
apps.
That's interesting. Yeah.
No, I think he is on there actually, but I just don't. I don't. He's not on video or nothing like that.
Yeah.
I don't think he prioritizes the YouTube page in the same way. The company that hosts his podcast, I think, has his show on there, but again, I don't think it's gonna traction the same way as his podcast because it's audio only. But,
yeah. I'll throw it on. But he's definitely mailing it a bit. He's mailing it in a bit.
You think so?
A little bit. I mean, he's interested in what he is.
New York sports.
Yeah, he loves football. If a New York sports team rises up to being worth talking about it, he'll get into it around that time.
Yeah.
But it's the difficult part. Like, if you're known for something, you're not allowed to navigate outside of it. And that was always the best part of Mike and the Mad Dog is like Mad Dog for 4% of the show would navigate people out of the conversation of the sports, and it would be funny for a minute. And then they get back, right? But I like to kind of meander towards the things I'm very interested in at the time when I want to talk about it.
Same thing with me.
Right? So that ends up, if I do an episode and I'm like, I have to do an episode that recaps this weekend. What if I'm not into it that weekend? And now I'm doing homework to make up some take, on a Monday. That's what really the thing that changed my vantage about this whole thing was when I started listening to Bill Burr's podcast. And I don't listen to it at all anymore.
Really? Why?
Not out of any reason of just time and capacity.
Because I'm the same way to it, but there'll be a week or two I'll listen to episodes and I'm like, and I'll go 6 months on this episode. So like, I get it.
But I do like that I've seen there's sometimes where he goes into a studio and interviews certain guests for his show. I think that's fun because I think he has a great approach to interviewing. Like he's smart enough to carry the whole thing and funny enough. So when he has a guest, he doesn't beat around the bush. He gets like right to stuff. Everyone starts laughing. Like even Joe Rogan can be a little too self-serious, right? But like Bill Burr's is like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not. But that was what changed my thing is that he's like, I'm recording every Sunday and I'm recording a smaller piece every like Thursday or whatever. And so he just does it regardless. So what he drops into that episode to do, and he's doing that because he has a promise to advertisers, to audience, and people listen. If you got 2 million people listening to you just shooting off the cuff, keep doing it.
Literally ranting. He's literally ranting on shit.
Yeah. And a lot of times he'll drop in, and this is where I led to like kind of how I like to do it, which is to be very conversational about where you are in that moment about a handful of things. And you might go into 4 subjects you didn't even think you were going to talk about in your own conversation with yourself. And so I always liked when he's like, I got the Chargers and the Titans on right now. What is up with, like he riffs on something that doesn't even, and then he'll talk about another thing, but it stays evergreen. It's not based on the thing happening there, but it's based off of something that occurs in his mind off of
while that thing is on in the background. Yeah. No, I'm the same way too. And I realized for myself through the years, as like I said, growth comes with this, age, all that interest. As much as I don't mind debate, embrace debate, whatever you call that, like the first take thing, I am like yourself. I prefer conversations. I prefer deep thought. I prefer like this, Let's strip it down. Let's discuss the topic. Let's get to the bones and see what we're talking about. And that's where I'm at. I like having conversations more than anything else, even about the things I'm into. Even if it's a solo show, let's take the one topic, let's dress it down, and go from there. Not debate yes or no. Everything has to be a debate. Some things could just be you say your point. You can rant on it, of course. I rant kind of the same thing too. But yeah, I realized in the last maybe year or two that I am more of a conversationalist than I am of a debater, if you will.
I think most people who listen to podcasts listen to them for passive entertainment. I don't think they're there to be actively present.
Yeah.
And so I really believe you have to do it in such a way where you're giving people time to think between just talking, that they're probably going to have it on and they're going to hear about 10% of it, but it's important to have it on. It's important to have something on.
Right.
And for a conversation line to catch your attention and make you think of something else, and that it feels good to finish one. I really think that's what a podcast is. Like when I think of I look forward to the Bill Simmons Cousin Sal podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I often can't tell you any of the teams that are playing each other based off of their guess the lines. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you what the line is that they agreed on or who won. I literally I hear it for conversation and to be caught up in two people talking and then something sticks out that's funny but it's really just playing. I'm not actively listening.
Yeah, sure. Especially with the long form stuff, like especially with Simmons, like I'll play Simmons, but I'll be like in and out of it. Like, okay, what? Oh, whatever. That kind of thing. It is what it is. I'm not gonna go back. 2-hour podcast. I don't have time for that.
No. And
I'm with you.
Yeah. So that ends up being, and it's tough because I feel like I don't make any headway on content that's not transient, like the day-to-day back and forth, this and that. So it's important to me to make headway, like in books, in
things that matter,
in movies, in television shows that are good, because it's a different feeling. Like I always say, it's almost the difference between, if you like whiskey, there's two ways to drink it, and the two ways give you different effect. You could do shots, or you could be 20 years older and sit in a nice chair with a whiskey on the rocks and sip that one shot for 30 minutes. And I really lean more towards the latter. Like I think it's hard to get into the mode where you're moving so fast. You're getting drunk in 3 minutes. You're like,
I'm starting,
you're out.
I'm starting to get to that point now where I don't want to. I want to enjoy. I prefer long form. I like long form, but I like to ease into it and enjoy it. Instead of like everything fast paced. And I'm with you on that one. I'm totally with you on that one. One more thing, quick out here. Have you been following all the political stuff going on? I mean, we're rapidly approaching another election season, just like that.
I haven't paid attention to anything except the secondhand high I get from what I see on social, pretty much on social. I'm not watching Morning Joe, which is kind of my gauge of how into the political season I am. And the hardest thing I have is whenever I see something, for instance, from like the New York Post go across, I get disgusted by how egregious the slant is. And like, I often think, are people actually falling for this slant? Hook, line, and sinker. And and it scares me more if they're falling for it, because that's a way bigger problem than even what the content is saying. And they're very direct about, like, it's funny actually. Like, if you know what's going on, it's funny to see their posts. Like they'll they'll find a bête noire, as they call it, right? And then they will ride the heck out of that. Like, you know, like the transgendered transportation executive in the Biden White House somehow, and then everything this person does is talked about. And you know, I saw something where they smartly picked out a part where Kamala Harris, who's like to them even worse than Biden, like the group, where she just in the normal course of a interview said, if anything were ever to happen, I'm here to step up to serve. And which is a normal thing you say, especially
her
when you're
job actually too. Also,
that's the job. But then, like, they put a terrible photo of Kamala Harris, and then it's like, Harris says she's ready to serve, and then it's got a picture of Biden like falling down. And it's like,
people fall for this shit, man.
Well, and it does give me some hope, because what we're seeing is the best that they have over this Biden presidency. We're seeing the best of what they have available to go after. And it's honestly almost all not that bad. And I think that if that doesn't resonate, things are still okay. Like, personally, from where I sit, I'm not reading it every day, but I think reading it every day is dangerous too.
Yeah.
Because what is there to say every day? Even in sports, what is there to say every day?
Right.
On the whole, I feel at ease with the country I'm living in from a leadership point of view. It's not in my face every day. The bad stuff, they're trying to do things. They've passed some things. I might try to get a solar roof because apparently there's such a good incentive.
Yeah.
They're not as good at telling the country all of the good things they did, but on the other hand, are enough swaths of the country willing to listen to those actual good things and believe them?
That's the question.
Is the other problem. So I think, I was a little alarmed because I was reading The Economist this week. I always pretty much am in line with The Economist, but they had a real article that was like, for the country's hope, you have to hope that Trump isn't in there and that someone is there to beat Biden. And I'm like, whoa. Now, they have a true political standing, which is very libertarian, right? So a lot of libertarianism, kind of, a lot free market, not over regulation.
Libertarians is to me is code for right wing, not far right, but right.
Yeah,
right-leaning.
I would say it's like the sense of libertarianism that's not that, because I agree there's a lot hidden behind that
exactly
cover, but it's a true libertarianism, I think. But whenever I hear criticism from like them, I expect it from certain places. But when I hear it, I'm like, I get the age thing. But other than that, I truly don't get, outside of party politics, what the problem with Joe Biden is, especially in relation to the alternative.
Like policy wise, like what and this is why I go back to, like, I'm not even a Joe Biden fan necessarily, but like, what are you don't like policy wise that other guy can do for you?
Yeah,
and I still can't get an answer to that question to this day.
No, and honestly, the big legislation, you get, it's almost like we were talking with Aaron Rodgers, right, and Tom Brady. You get them, it's kind of Super Bowl or bust in the first 2 years.
Yeah, of course.
It's the same thing with this. You win, it's one big piece of legislation or bust in your first 2 years. And then the second 2 years, nothing's going to get done anyway, because it's after the midterms.
Right.
It appears to me, and I feel as though he put out a very meaningful piece of legislation. I don't even know, was it Build Back Better? I don't know which one it's called, but
it's infrastructure.
That was a really good piece of legislation, in my opinion.
Right.
And it was only limited to the depths I wish it could go, or to the heights I wish it could go, by Joe Manchin towing a centrist, if you call it that, a centrist line, which is fine. So it's only been moderated from what it could have been.
Right.
And short of that, I have not heard, because I don't even know if the Republican Party has a platform anymore. I've never heard what the true alternative is to the kinds of legislation that were done here, because it just can't be it just can't be cut, and it just like
Tax cuts. That's it. Yeah.
like isn't there isn't there some kind of place where we can figure out where both sides, centrists on both sides, can actually come together and go away to like Camp David or something without the president there and come out and go, these are the foundational truths on which the two parties as they stand together can agree on. And I don't think they would be allowed to do it. That's the problem. But like I need that.
The problem is too also you have, and I think to a lesser extent for the Democrats, but more so on the Republican side, the ones that are loudest are the ones getting all the attention.
Yeah, and it's just attention. That's it. It's eyeballs on media. It's not. And the minute you hear attention people, they're not the people who are going back into the cloakrooms
right
and hammering out legislation. In fact, the ones hammering out legislation, that's another problem, are decided by seniority in many ways. And so you don't have the new voices at the table because this is how it's always been done. You know, it's like what we saw in media where newspapers ran the day and the oldest writers were the ones who got to cover the pro sports. And then people like Bill Simmons came along and said, I'm not going to wait around for 20 years to cover the Celtics. I'm just going to cover them on AOL. I'm going to send out a newsletter. And I'm going to come from a fan point of view. You know, like you look at the insanity of these Mitch McConnell freeze-ups. And
it's crazy.
It's alarming. It like that to me is something that Democrats don't seem to be able to get down into the mud and do dark things sometimes way. But you couldn't deep fake a worse indictment of that. Like that's something you could edit and make it look like it's as bad as in reality it actually was. And I feel bad for it more than anything. It's not even, but like, that's what I want to know. I want to know, okay, so this is the legislation that actually passed. Here's what, if a Republican leadership were in place, here's what our counterfactual A/B test, this is what we would have done. And then here's the actual place that we can both agree on in any negotiation.
Yeah.
There are the things, the trade-offs, the concessions, the do this, and they used to always call them earmarks.
Yeah.
Kickback, like all this. Earmarks I've actually read were a good thing because it got specific legislators into line to vote because you gave something for their constituents.
Right.
But there's no. So all I know is day to day, how am I living? I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling like I can focus on the aforementioned business we were talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling like someone's not behind the scenes trying to hurt any of those aspects, hurt my family, my extended, hurt my friends. I feel like I have somebody who is looking out for as much the common person as you can, who aren't focused on certain, be they money and interests or things like that. And I know they're going to go, yes, they are. And, Hunter Biden's in Ukraine doing that. It's like, the big guy. So none of it actually resonates. What I do see is Donald Trump's family doing those things. And this all being brought in to try to make that look like it's not what it was or it's not as bad because everybody's doing it. So I don't know what the Republican Party stands for anymore.
I don't either. I don't. And I say as someone that used to be Republican 15 years ago, and it's nowhere even close to even 15 years ago. At least it had a platform of what they stood for: small government, this and that. I can't even say that anymore.
It's the party, not of the exceptional. It's the party of the exception. It's the party of the media we see, where in 100 occurrences, 98 good showcases of humanity are happening, the expected.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 are the egregious. It's the party of focusing on those 2 things
Yeah.
and beating them into a pulp where the 2 things become representative of the other 98.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a whole swath of people who believe in it. It's about the other is doing bad. This city is in shambles. This place, not where we are. And by the way, like you look at places that are completely Republican, you put like places like Mississippi or, maybe places like this in the South there.
Yeah.
They will keep voting this way because they don't even have in the walls of their state. They're not even let into what's maybe happening in more progressive states that do good for people like them.
Right.
And so you end up just being in this feedback loop of, well, this is how it's been. It's how it's always going to be. They're doing Republican things. It's what we believe in, but you don't even get the access to try to see, well, maybe that other thing does work for me. And so I just don't know how, so it's hard for me to get into it because, people go, oh, watch out. If Nikki Haley gets in, she'll beat him. And I keep wondering, I think it's undersaid how much Donald Trump has bankrupted the party to the point where it's like waking up after a terrible year hangover on New Year's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And all you see to get back to the person you want to be is 6 months of hard work ahead of you. And so you go, you know what? Hair of the dog. Let's just get a Bloody Mary. And, she's got blood coming out of her, whatever,
Yeah, right.
But that is the difficulty. And when you hold on to a way of doing it, and he made people feel so good about themselves, he gave them license to heed their darker selves. The things that no one says, he gave license for you to say them. But he's not there to support you or to cash or to help you write that check when you do it. Look how many freaking Proud Boys are away for like 15 years now or whatever I'm seeing. So you got to be careful with the, you watched Lost, right?
I saw the first 3 episodes and then I checked out.
It's like John Locke's dad coming around as the good dad all the years later because he needed a kidney. But he's really he's pretending, oh, I want to have my son again. He got the kidney and he was out of the hospital bed when John woke up. Mm-hmm. We know it. This is it couldn't be any clearer. And I would say if that's the country you want to be, I guess go for it. But I feel very happy with what I have. And I know it's like, well, there's no enthusiasm in the party. Because when you're living your life, we're not out here every day going, Joe Biden, let's go. Joe Biden. I'm living my life.
Yeah. I'm here working my job and, support my kids and, trying to flourish a marriage and all that. Yeah.
I don't want to think I don't want to have to. And that's the beauty of of him being in charge.
Well, and to your point, you said for years on your podcast, like you want the president to be in the background always. So true.
Absolutely. Like technology.
Yeah.
It dutifully serve in the background, come up to the front. Like I always like to say this in the industry I work in, come up to the front when there's a decision to be made.
Right.
When the decision is made, tech's got to get the hell out of the way and let people get on with their business.
Right.
Tech is supposed to enable people to get on with their business, to do it better, to do it more efficiently. It's kind of like government. There is a point every 4 years we have to make a procurement decision.
Yeah.
Make the best decision, but then get out of the way. Trump never got out of the way because he can't. He loves being, and he thought, well, I'm getting ratings. Because we're scared to death. You're tweeting that you're going to hit the button.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't do this. Yes, it gets ratings. So does so does Antonio Brown. The person with the gun,
right? Exactly.
The person with the gun with their shirt off out on the street is getting my attention.
Yeah.
People probably say it's like, oh, you're typical liberal. No, I'm not. Oh, well, small business. I'm a small business owner, technically.
Yeah. No, technically, you are supposed to be the owner.
I, I feel okay. I am pleased with a government that does something to even the balance a bit.
Right.
I don't want a world where there's people living in terrible abject poverty 30 miles from me,
Right.
such so that they can't even get a meal and I can go down the street and pay $10 for a latte. Like,
Right.
I don't want that. I want a world where it's like it's more even, where our bases are covered from health insurance, our children to be watched so we don't have a hole in our pockets waiting for them to get into school, so we don't have to pay a full-time salary to a babysitter to watch them.
Yeah.
I want some of those basic things that allow me to get on with the business of doing my job.
Yeah.
And being an American. And I see Phil Murphy, I see Joe Biden, I see them talking about those things and trying to do things for that. And by the way, when my kids are in school, I'm not just going to change my tune and be like, all right, it's not me anymore. I don't care now that they're in the school. Like, these things, the line between rich and poor is much tinier than anyone thinks.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. Did I tell you I'm gonna start a book club in this podcast?
No.
I'm gonna start a book club. And actually, our mutual friend is the one that kind of triggered the idea. Well, I had the idea for a long time, but we were discussing it. John Preston Jacobs was on this podcast back in August, and he was showing me a book, and it triggered the idea. I've had the idea for quite a while now. I'm gonna do it now. A book club. Do you have any recommendations for books?
Yes, I'll tell you what, which is kind of funny saying this. I've been on just an absolute binge in the last 2 years of books about Donald Trump's presidency.
Oh, dude, show those. Please send those to me because I'm definitely like.
And what I do,
I'm actually, in fact, what I'm going to do, because I'm actually going to get back into libraries again, and I'm actually after this call, I'm going to go to the library next to my house. If I get my kids from school, and I'm going to try to get my library card updated again so I can get access to audiobooks. Because apparently, if you do that, you can get it for free.
Oh, yeah. No, you can. And what I do, you should subscribe to bookbub.com.
I have that ready.
Yep. So I, every day, every week, another Donald Trump, I've read so many because I want to read about how bad it is behind the scenes to help me be a better leader. And, like every one of them has come up in BookBub. So I pay $2. I still have to read Confidence Man. The one
is it an audiobook or is it regular books? Is it
no, it's Kindle books.
Kindle. Okay.
So my book list is absolutely
insane,
out of control. I can let me see. How do I show my screen here? Let me see. Share screen. Let's try Kindle. Yeah, look how crazy this is.
Okay, I'll try right now. Show up the stage. Add to the stage. This is your Kindle here?
This is my Kindle book list.
Dude,
of
you are insane.
Yeah, because they come out at $2. I know in my head the books I always want to get. I wait for them. So look at this. It goes on forever.
I see the Closerman book in the corner.
I do have the Closerman book. So
yeah,
I would say, let's see here.
Dude, you have the same interest too. Also, with the politics and stuff, for example, and the sports. Yeah,
Simon
same.
Sinek's good. Confidence Man. Let's see the one I got. The Bill Walsh showed up in there. I was like, sure, what a Henry Kissinger on China.
Are these done? Or you guys?
No. This is the problem. So I've also been getting into fiction on purpose because it expands your horizon in ways you don't even realize. So Tana French, they're the Dublin murder mysteries. They're good. I got tons of Tana French here.
Let me ask you a question. Do you consider audiobooks a form of reading?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so you're the first person that's actually agrees with me on that. I said
No, 100%.
no, because people say no, it's not reading. Reading is actually putting your eyeballs. No, I go no, because you're still using the same brain. You're still taking the
No.
information. It's just different.
Yeah, no, I consider them read books. And by the way, when you're in Kindle and Audible, if you have both, there's a sync.
Yeah.
So you can pick up on either kind wherever you left off on the other. It knows where you were based on what you're listening. So
Right.
it'll just open in the Kindle to where you listened to.
I
This
can't.
was a good one. Play
I
nice,
can't
but
seem to
win.
get. I can't seem to get into like fiction books anymore. Like
You got to just push. You got to just. You have to just trust it and do it. So
well, not that I wouldn't do it. It's just that I'm more into, you know, like a Trump book, for example. I'll read that, or you know, a political book or autobiography. I'm into that stuff more than anything else. I wanted to read the book on what was it, the Game of Thrones stuff. I wanted to read that, and I never got around to reading it.
yeah, you got to just kind of. Let's see, where do we have here? No, they don't have it by fiction. You have to commit to a very good one. And you have to do it almost for the same reason that you buy insurance or that you take vitamins. It's not going to help you right when you take it, but there's something it adds to you. It's like dreaming. It's like experience. Something happens when you read something from a great writer who we do it with movies and television where all we're doing is, do you ever have that moment where you're watching and you go, what the hell am I watching? Why am I binging pure fiction?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll get that and then I'll be like, no, it's okay. Just get back. But where's the one? Who's yeah. So like I'm reading, like this Jennifer Egan is a great,
I know she is.
Yeah. She's a great writer of fiction. Tana French is phenomenal. I would recommend reading the first Dublin murder mystery book. It's really good. That's as far as I got so far, even though I got all of them. The other one I'm reading is, who is it? It's the not Tart, but is it the Goldfinch?
I'm looking at the Trump books you have right there, Siege, and I'm trying to mark those down now so I can order those.
Yeah,
the Michael Wolff book. The Michael book you got years ago. I've been meaning to get that for a long time.
Yeah, so I mean, this is like, and it's only when I open this that I feel really dejected, because I'll be reading a book. Sometimes it takes me a month to read a book, and I got like 35 in, but I wait fully.
But these also have the audiobook option, right?
Not always, but sometimes. Pelosi, that's actually a good book, as weird as it sounds. Mm-hmm. She's quite a story. Yeah, there's one of the Trump books. So I got the first year, the second year. Great TED Talks, of course, Michael Lewis books, who's been in a lot of trouble lately.
Really?
Yeah, remember with the Blindside stuff?
Oh yeah. Right. Yes.
This one, I love Daniel Yergin. I have to read the new map. He writes books about the history of. He has one about the history of oil and how it tells the history of the world. Mm-hmm. Those kind of really fascinating. This is a famous business book, Measure What Matters. It's the basis for a lot of tech. I actually read the Can't Knock the Hustle about the first year of the Brooklyn Nets
I heard that.
It's interesting.
He also wrote another book recently too on the Nets, all the recent Nets as well. Matt Sullivan also.
Okay, well that might be it, right? Or he wrote a new one?
No, new one with the KD Kyrie era.
Yeah, this is them. That's them there.
Oh, okay.
Can't Knock the Hustle. Yeah, so it was the first year. I love the business Airbnb story. I got this JFK book, which is out there and famous. $1 Billion Loser, which is what that show that was on Apple TV Plus about WeWork and Adam Neumann. Really well done. Adam Driver played him. That was a good show, actually. Getting to yes.
Is it cheaper to get books on Kindle or on audiobooks for the same price, you think?
No, it's way cheaper on Kindle when the deal comes.
Oh, okay.
So I only wait for the deals. I don't buy books for full price anymore, because eventually, like even this book, the Joe Biden book by Evan Osnos, showed up in BookBub. And I was like, yeah, I'll read it, but yeah, I would. Ride of a Lifetime's a phenomenal book. Rob Iger, head of Disney when he came. Obviously I got my Jeff Pearlman ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a whole lot to read here. There's another Jennifer
Yeah.
Egan one. Yeah. It's freaky when you get
So
to this point, but
yeah, I have a bit of a couple books here on Kindle I haven't read yet. I finished reading. I have a couple of the department books also too. But I've been leaning to audiobooks. I've been leaning to audiobooks more than anything else because I'm always on headphones. I'm always exercising. I'm always doing things. So that's easy for me just to pop on the audiobooks and go.
books you can read at night though before bed and they put you to sleep when
Yeah.
video doesn't. And
Right.
then if I get up in the morning early, if I just wake up at 6 and I don't want to get out of bed, I'll just start reading. And so that probably happens 2 or 3 times a week. And I make my way through. Yeah, Jonathan Franzen is a great fiction writer. Obviously, Infinite Jest is there. Will I ever read
And
it?
you
I don't know.
and you say BookBub was book. Well, just what I just realized I had BookBub, and I think I might have actually deleted it, cleaned
Oh
up my
yeah.
phone recently.
No,
I haven't used it in a
BookBub is fantastic. Thinking Fast and Slow is one of the all-time psychology books in the last 10 years or so. Daniel Kahneman. You could read that book and learn everything.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen King. Like if you see a Stephen King show up, read it. There's a reason he's so great. And I know it's like, oh, it's too massive. No, he's such a phenomenal writer. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So
How's
yeah.
the Closerman book of the '90s? I want to get that book really bad.
I haven't read it. I have it, but I haven't. I think
No,
I'm
I
reading.
saw you had in the corner. I was like, oh my god.
I think I'm reading. Problem is, I don't have it open on this device, but I think I'm reading this one.
How many books? Dude, it's at least 100 books on this thing I'm reading here.
I know.
Holy crap!
It's that. It wasn't that one that I was reading, but it's. Yeah, this one was one of Obama's reading books, and I saw it show up in BookBub. Clara and the Sun. Like, will I ever read it? I don't know. Like, I mean, I read well,
But you bought it. But you bought it though.
Oh, this is the one I'm reading now. The Nightingale. It's about the Nazi takeover of France around World War II in a small village in France. It's phenomenal. And it's, like if a book is extremely highly rated and everyone's
Right.
reading it and it shows up, read fiction. There's a reason. And there's something about it that fills in something that's missing in you. It just works. I don't know how to explain it. So I would try a fiction.
Well, any books you're reading you want me to read that we can do a podcast on and review, let me know. Like I said, there's a book on that episode. You heard that episode with me and Josh called. It's a book called Generation, generational. That I'm gonna get. And it's discussed the different generations and stuff of society and whatnot, and how it relates to today and all that. And I'm very interested in that. So we're gonna do hopefully once I'm done that book, a episode just solely on that book. So if you have any recommendations you want to shoot at me that we can review on the podcast in the future, go right ahead.
Yeah, we got my last one. Let's see what my Audible. I'm reading the Bo Jackson book, listening to it now.
Okay, the Perlman one, right?
The Perlman one. That's
Blood in the Garden. I need to get that one. Blood in the Garden. Highly recommended. I heard.
It's a great business book.
No, Chris Herring. Chris Herring?
Yeah, Chris Herring. Yeah.
Yep.
Build an Unorthodox Guide to Making Things Worth Making is an absolutely phenomenal business book. I finished it. It's by Tony Fadell, who invented the scroll wheel on the iPod. Was part of the guy who invented the iPhone, or part of the team that developed the iPhone.
Right.
And then he left and then built Nest. So he used the same scroll wheel that he used on the iPad on the Nest or on the iPod on the Nest thermostat. So everything he builds is around that. So it's a good one. I'll tell you what, the Tim Ferriss books, Tools of Titans, Tribe of Mentors,
Yeah.
phenomenal books to read, to listen, because you're asking like 100 something people, 130 plus people, the same 4 or 5 questions, and then their answers. You get so much out of it so quickly. And it's like a podcast in a way. And then you move on and it's bite-sized, but yet huge. So yeah, no, that's I got a lot.
wow.
Yeah, I got this
That's
was
awesome.
this Season in the Sun, the inside story of Bruce
These
Arians.
books you already have ready?
Yeah, these I already have.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
You gotta clean up the I remember you used to say back on the podcast like years ago, like, I got these books I gotta clear up, and
I know it gets worse.
You added more. Oh my God, you added more.
I got Giannis.
This is giving me like anxiety now. To be honest with you.
I know.
Oh my
Welcome
God. I had that book. I had that show book. Okay, right? He's been on my show like 3 times already. Roland Lazenby.
Look at this. It keeps.
Oh my God.
I got one of the Robert Caro books.
I would read that Lyndon Johnson book actually. He's actually fascinating.
Oh, it'll take you about 6 years though. It'll take you longer to read it than it took Robert Caro to write it. Robert Caro has spent the last 50 years of his life writing the definitive stories of Lyndon Johnson.
Really?
And they're hoping that he survives to write the last one right now. His editor just died last year. His editor of the books. Mm-hmm. So it's like, 1935 he was born. He's got to get, look at this. He's got all the Lyndon Johnson books.
Oh my God.
And then his famous book was The Power Broker about Robert Moses, who kind of built New York.
Yeah.
But that was the first one. And then his whole rest of his life has been, look, Path to Power, Master of the Senate, Passage of Power, Means of Ascent.
What's the obsession with Lyndon Johnson? I'm curious.
He just got into it, and it's just his life's passion. They're the most sought after books you can have. Because Lyndon Johnson was a very important character.
Of course he was. Yeah.
When you think about it, very kind of Biden-like, where the older guy, for different reasons, the afterthought, got the presidency and was able to use who he is and is just like Joe Biden was kind of a master of the Senate. Use his history, his likeness to the other legislators to get the things done that were promised with the pretty young face. In this case, JFK. In Biden's case, Obama, right? So, it's a really interesting thing. I got to read the...
You already got it? Or you not even gotten it?
No, I have a few of these books. I've been reading Path to Power for about 7 years, but no, because it's so dense. Like they're amazing books, but they're so dense.
Yeah.
In a good way. Like the detail is unbelievable. This is one I should knock out. I have it in my books. It's a Robert Caro book about working and the process of writing and the process of building relationships and rapport with people you're going to write about. And so I have that. I should finish that one. That's doable. Like, look at the timelines on some of these.
Yeah.
Where is it here? 40 hours and 29 minutes for Path to Power. 16 hours. That's a little better. 32 hours.
You're giving me anxiety, buddy.
22 hours. You're looking at, and even at 1.7 speed, that sucker takes a year. So
that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, that's that. There should just be like a story. There should just be a book club about your backlog.
What's funny? Don't give me any ideas, man. I might actually take that idea on seriously. Dude, we went 2 hours.
Oh, man. Well, that's
awesome.
Cool. That's cool.
You want to plug anything before we get out of here?
No, I should plug my mouth. Talking too much. No, I got Mixed Minus podcast. I have a podcast that's similar, but in the work realm called The Coniverse that I'm a co-host on. Got a lot of travel coming up. Working on a whole lot of things.
Are you going to try to be consistent on your podcast now with episodes?
We'll see.
Does the schedule now allow you to be now that school's over?
It's hard. It's just hard because when you're in the mode of doing several things for business, there's not the headspace to not think about all these deadlines and what you have to get to and the next thing. You don't have the time to contemplate, and contemplation is the very basis of a podcast.
Right.
So what I need to do is trust more just pressing record and going. And who cares? Whatever's in your mind at the time is in your mind at the time. Trust your ability to get through it and talk about whatever's trending or whatever's on your mind and call it a day, like Bill Burr.
I was going to say that. It's like Bill Burr. That's what I do too. Same thing. I just take the things I want to talk about and just riff. If it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, it is what it is. Good job, Matt, as always, man.